Welcome to the PricePlow Podcast. Today's April 11th of 2023, and you're going to be listening to this a little bit more in the future. So we are here with Spencer Lynn of KOS, and Spencer is Northeast sales manager extraordinaire on LinkedIn especially. We see some incredible posts from you. I met you in person at the Arnold, and we had a great time. So I wanted to get you on the podcast because you recently ran an ultra marathon, and we need to hear some stories here. So congratulations on finishing. It's like just such a epic thing. So briefly, feel free to introduce yourself to us, and let's get into it. Let's talk about you, and then let's talk about KOS.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, I just ran an ultra marathon, not just any ultra marathon either. It was actually 100-miler, which is, just about as far as you could go. I'm the Northeast Regional Manager for KOS. We have a line of USDA certified plant protein powder. We also have our reds and our greens blends of like functional single ingredients like a beetroot powder, an acai powder, lion's mane powder. We started off 2019 pretty much entirely D2C and on Amazon, and then since then we've rolled out pretty heavily into retail distribution. So I will say our target demo is not PricePlow's target demo. Our target demo is probably like PricePlow's mom or PricePlow's girlfriend's or wife's target demo. Maybe PricePlow's like brother-in-law's target demo who like goes to the gym 2 or 3 days a week, but doesn't really work that hard there. So we're more of like a general health and wellness company. We're not, your hardcore gym bro company. But at the end of the day, we kind of all have the same goals, and that should be, giving consumers as many healthy and beneficial options as possible. Especially in retail, we're starting to see a lot more supplement companies moving into retail, and it's cool. And I'm a fan of that too. I kind of take the approach that like a rising tide lifts all ships. Brands like Caged, we just saw them get into Wegmans. VMI Sports does really well in Giant Eagle. They're all over the place in Giant Eagle. So, I welcome as many sports nutrition, as many health and wellness brands in retail as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. What I love about the way you're working is that you're showing this stuff, your hustle on LinkedIn. And so you're busy, and we've kind of been watching the trajectory of everything you've been doing. But it was honestly speaking. And so I have tasted your product. There's a review back there. I was kind of doing a blind flavor review because you're that confident in your vegan protein, compared against my favorite, vanilla vegan, and your chocolate was incredible. So definitely a fan. And we are, we're reaching out to other individuals. We'll always be more sports nutrition heavy. That's just, where we've come from. But it was the ultra marathoner. I'm not even sure what you call it, if it's like a centurion or something like that.
100-miler. Yeah, 100-miler.
The 100-miler is really what got our attention. And it seems like it was pretty brutal, but a lot of people dropped out, but you didn't. So I'd like to kind of get your personal background and what makes one do such a thing.
That's a good question. I've been asked that a lot. So I guess just my personal background, I grew up playing sports my whole life. Started, dabbling in every sport when I was young, and then kind of focused in on football right around eighth, ninth grade. And then from there, I found the gym, right? That's kind of, I think a lot of people's first step is getting into the gym as they started playing football, started, going into strength and conditioning in high school. And I really just fell in love with the gym. I saw what it did to my body. I saw what it did to my performance on the field. And then that, falling in love with the gym and training kind of snowballed into supplements. I remember my parents would take me to our local gym. They'd drop me off. I'd get my workout in, and then I'd call them at the end of my workout to come pick me up, and I'd sit up in the front of the gym, and they had all the muscle magazines up there, all the Muscle and Fitness, the Flex, and I would just look through those muscle magazines. I would find new workouts to do, and of course you see all the supplement ads, and this was circa 2005, 2006. So like right at the peak of those muscle magazines, when brands like Muscle Tech and BSN were just like bombarding advertisements in there. So, you see all the supplement ads, and then that was just like the next logical step was like, oh, I got to take creatine now. I'm 14 years old. I got to take creatine. The older guys on the football team are all taking creatine. So I remember going to my parents and asking them, like, hey, mom, dad, can I take creatine? And just the default answer is no. They see a label and it says not for use under 18, not for use under anybody under 18 years old. And no for me wasn't good enough at that time. So the gym, I had a GNC about 1.5 miles away from the gym in a shopping plaza. So now I'd get my workout in the gym, and instead of going out and sitting up front waiting for my parents to come home, I would walk to GNC, go in and buy creatine, and either the GNC person was selling me creatine when I wasn't 18, or I would kind of just wait outside until some older person was walking in, and I would ask them to buy creatine for me. So I was kind of doing what what people do at like beer distributors and liquor stores, waiting outside of those, asking the older person to buy me a beer or something. But I was asking them to buy me creatine. So that's kind of how I just like fell in love with supplements. And then from there, I went on to play football in college. I believe it or not, I used to weigh 230 pounds. I was kind of like a big meat stick of a dude. I'm not that anymore. I'm like 170 pounds right now on a good day. But I went on to play football in college, and then 1 year professionally overseas in Germany. Came home, joined the military, and then once I got out of the military, this is kind of where my journey into the supplement world really began. Well, yeah, I had been interested in it the whole time I was in the military, my own health and fitness and everything. And just, keeping track of, what was new, what was trending in the supplement world. I mean, I always took pre-workout, ate healthy, ate all my protein, was always tied into supplements and everything. And, so as I was transitioning out of the military, your last 3 months in service, you can apply for a program called the Career Skills Program. And that allows you to do a civilian internship to prepare for your transition back into the civilian world out of the military. And at the time I was, trying to find somewhere to do my internship. I was trying to find somewhere cool to do it, somewhere that was interesting to me. The military has a kind of default programs that they could put you in where you work logistics in a warehouse for a company that does contracting with the military, or, you can handle their supply and logistics for trucks that already do contracting with the military. But I wanted to do, something different. I wanted to go out and find my own thing. Still being very interested and being very, involved in the supplement world, just as a fan, really, as like on the outside looking in. I'd always followed Compound Solutions on Instagram, and I knew who they were because of, Teacrine, Dynamine, Pico 2, just following along. And one day they had in their stories, I was just looking through their stories the one day, and I saw this guy who, big tatted up guy, big beard, big muscular guy. And I'm thinking, like, who the heck is this guy? Because I always had like a very buttoned up image of Compound Solutions. Like, they're very professional. They're very, just dialed in and business like all the time. But there's this big tatted up guy in their stories. I'm thinking, like, who the heck is this guy? So I'm flipping through the stories, and I say, okay, Vaso 6. I know what that is. Oh, this is the guy behind Vaso 6. It ended up being Matt Nickerson. I'm sure you guys are familiar with Matt Nickerson. So he was doing an Ask Me Anything. He was taking over their stories for that day. He was at their headquarters, and he was doing an Ask Me Anything. So I kind of just, I don't know, I don't know what prompted me to do it, but I just shot him a question in the Ask Me Anything sticker that he put on his stories. So what does somebody want to do to get their foot in the door in the supplement industry? Like, what's the best way to go about that? And I was like, he's never going to respond to me. Compound Solutions has like 60,000 followers on Instagram. I'm never going to get a response. 5 minutes later, I get a notification. He responds. He tags me in it. And it's just, he kind of does like the thinking emoji face. He made a video. He kind of did like the thinking emoji face. And he was like, send me a DM. Like, all right, I jumped down this rabbit hole. So I sent him a DM, explained my situation, that I'm transitioning out of the military. I'm in this program where I can do an internship in the civilian world. Like, is there anything I can do for Vaso 6? Is there anything I can do to be your personal assistant? I don't know, as an internship, whatever. And he got back to me like later that day, and he said, I'll think about it. I'll think about it and I'll get back to you the next day or something. I'm like, he's never going to get back to me. This guy's like 1 million followers on Instagram. It's whatever. It is what it is. I followed up with him the next day, and I said, hey, just wanted to see if you thought of anything. And he ended up giving me the email address for Kelsey Olenoff, who is the marketing director at Compound Solutions. And he said, reach out to her and explain to her what you just explained to me. So further down the rabbit hole, sure enough, I sent Kelsey an email. I was thinking she's never going to respond. She's the director of marketing at Compound Solutions. Some random guy sending her an email. Sure enough, she responded and said, that's interesting. We'd like to take a look at bringing you in as an intern. I guess long story short, at this point, I kind of interviewed with, the whole company, to include Matt Titlow. And then Kim, the president at Compound Solutions, she decided to kind of create a spot for me as an intern. I interned there for 3 months, mostly in the marketing department, but I also got to touch a little bit of sales and a little bit of operations there as well. At the end of the 3 months, my internship was over. I was transitioning out of the military at that point, and I did so well at my internship that they decided to offer me a job on the spot. So first day I got out of the military, I started with Compound Solutions, and I was with them for about 2 years. That was kind of my roundabout way that I got in the supplement industry. But I think that's a pretty cool story, and I'll forever be grateful to Matt Nickerson and Kelsey Olenoff at Compound Solutions for just kind of taking a chance on some random guy on Instagram. So
that's awesome. Matt has a bit of a cult following in the sports supplement industry.
Yeah.
I'm sure anyone watching this knows or listening, but he's a great guy, and he always loves to help people out, which is it can be hard to get into this industry? I'm sure you can appreciate with your journey, and that's probably a question I get every single day of the week on our Q&As is how do I get in? And you're the second person I know who, like, from outside this industry found their way in on purpose. Most people are not willing to honestly eat shit. Like my in was working in customer service for a year. You know, like I got offered a spot, but like you had to work your way up. And most people want to like come out of the gates formulating for Glaxon. They don't want to, be an intern or find their way up. So
they want to come out of the gates like directing sales for Ghost or something. Like a lot of people start at GNC or Vitamin Shop and they get found from there. It is hard to get into this industry that way. I mean, like I said, I had to do an unpaid internship for 3 months, but it ended up paying off. And now I'm in this industry. I don't plan on going anywhere. I love this industry. I'm a fan of the industry that I work in. I mean, I would listen to the PricePlow podcast way back since it started. I distinctly remember one that you guys did live at the Arnold. Ben, I think you were still with NutriBio at the time.
So funny.
It was a guest. Yeah.
That was the first episode. Yeah.
I distinctly remember watching that and thinking like, this is the coolest podcast. This is the coolest industry there is. And I want to be in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're glad you are and everything. We, we've definitely made a commitment, and hopefully, and people have noticed, like, we are doing these every week, and you can see, like, we scheduled you up, and we're serious about this. We should honestly be at episode 200. Hey, but you know what? The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. Otherwise, best time is now. So we're doing it. And so, we appreciate you noticing. I didn't know you'd listen to that. That was a fun time. And, that was where Ben and I first headed off. So that was not that podcast itself, but that trip really in general. So that was an incredible time. It is a great industry. I just
remember that being like a unique podcast because you guys did it live, like at the Arnold. Were you guys in the Hyatt? Is that where you were?
We were literally in the lobby of that hotel.
That's where everything happens.
We just took over the lobby. Yeah.
Everything happens at the Arnold. That's like the secret spot.
Yeah, but like you're usually at the bar upstairs. If you go down the escalator, there's a little spot with like computers you can like print stuff out at. And there used to be like a big like dining room table for whatever reason. It's not there anymore. It's probably because someone podcasted there in the middle of the lobby, honestly.
No, that's cool.
2 guys almost fought over beta-alanine that day.
CJ and I got into a heated argument about beta-alanine. That was funny.
Yeah. Awesome. So wait, I got to go back to, you played some professional football in Germany. You're 230 pounds. What position were you playing? How tall are you?
I'm 6'1", and I was a linebacker. So I was 6'1", 230. Like I said, I was a meat stick, just a big bulky dude. If you guys would see pictures of me back then, you wouldn't even think I'm the same person now.
Well, now we have to show some for the show.
We're gonna need them.
Yeah, I'll find some. Yeah, I'll find some for sure. I was a big dude. So I played overseas in Germany. If you guys might be old enough to remember NFL Europe. You guys remember NFL Europe at all?
I do.
So like it folded in like 2006 or 2007, but like the remnants of it still exist over there. Like there's still like a hardcore like niche following of American football in Europe. So that's where I played for a year. It was a great experience. Awesome. Obviously, you're not making NFL money. I mean, they paid me like $1,000 a month and gave me a crappy apartment to live in. But I got to travel all over Europe and keep playing football for another year. So that was cool.
Yeah, sounds like a great experience. Like, some people, they know exactly what they want to do, want to get right after it, but like taking a year to do something crazy like that, like, dude, you're not going to be able to do that when you're my age, so
yeah.
And when you're 22 or whatever.
I took 2 weeks as well and backpacked solo by myself, and I made it to like 14 different countries in 2 weeks. It was incredible. Hopped on a train every night and then wake up in a new city the next day. It was amazing.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I actually met Spencer before you, Mike. I don't know if you know this, but at the summit this year.
Yeah.
And Spencer had a really cool talk at the Sports Nutrition Summit, which I think kind of like maybe like arches this conversation which was about nutrition and military. And it was a really eye-opening conversation because obviously like that's kind of like, our country's highest level of athletes, or we would hope so. During that time of your life, like was that something you were focusing on? Was nutrition and fitness, was that a focus at that point? Or is this kind of like a retrospective interest of yours now?
No, that's a great question. I would say health, fitness, sports nutrition, supplements is something that I've always been interested in. Like I said, way back when I started looking at the muscle magazines when I was 14, 15 years old in the gym. So even in the military, I was still very, very interested in fitness, especially because I was a platoon leader. I was an infantry platoon leader in the Army. So I'm responsible for a platoon of 42 dudes. And that includes our daily training, our daily PT every morning. So, not only for my own purposes, but I stay in very good shape, but for my platoon as well. I was, responsible for coming up with the workout program for those guys every day. And then, I would try to educate them as much as possible on diet and staying away from alcohol and stop smoking cigarettes. And, if you are going to go to GNC, don't just buy what the guy there tells you to. You should, look into good pre-workout ingredients and make sure you're getting a quality protein powder and make sure you're hitting your daily protein intake every day. And I would say, I kind of talked about this in my speech at the Sports and Active Nutrition Summit. It was kind of like an 80-20, right? Like 80% of our platoon was pretty squared away, and then 20% were like the knuckleheads that would, they would show up to PT hungover in the morning, but they'd still be able to run 5 miles relatively quickly. So I would just imagine what those guys could do if they took stuff a little more seriously.
Yeah.
That was always what kind of influenced, like an 80-20, my platoon sergeant and I. So
yeah. What was the food situation like for you, at least?
So that's a good question too. So that's another thing I talked about in my talk at the Sports and Active Nutrition Summit was the military's default food in the field is an MRE, which I'm sure you're familiar, meal ready to eat, the little brown plastic baggie that has like all kind of crappy, just feed oil loaded, just nasty, like basically like Campbell's chunky soup in like pouches that you can eat on the go. That's like what most of an MRE is. And it's not good quality nutrition. But I mean, the trade-off is it has to be shelf stable for a long time in tough conditions. It has to be relatively light and easy to carry and pack in your rucksack and maneuver around. So yeah, the food situation in the military isn't ideal. What my hopes for the Sports and Active Nutrition Summit was, I knew I was presenting to a room full of academics and businessmen and very smart people. I kind of wanted to like show where the gaps in the military's nutrition and supplement world exist, and then hopefully somebody in that room much smarter than myself could exploit one of those gaps and make a lot of money for themselves or something, because there's big money in government contracts and there's plenty of gaps and plenty of room for improvement in how the military handles not only supplements but sports nutrition as well.
Could you I mean, that was like an hour-long talk. I mean, could you maybe cover some of the other stuff? I mean, I listened to that, I learned a lot about like the shortcomings, where like maybe hit like maybe 2 or other 3 like other things that you found to be like big detriments to our military's nutrition.
Yeah, I think I mean they have done a better job as of lately. They've come out with like food guides, like the Warrior Nutrition Guide is like a 112-page document that's been published and it's easily accessible, for anybody in the military. And it does actually go pretty in depth as far as it even mentions DSHEA and things like that are pretty, intricate in the supplement world. So they have been doing better since I've got out, it seems like. But I mean, at the time, the hardest thing to implement is just it's on such a big scale. So you really need to kind of empower like the lower level leaders, like myself as a platoon leader, where I can affect 42 guys that are under my direct control. Instead of like big army trying to instantly impact 1 million people in the army, you need to educate like the leaders at the lowest level, and then they need to educate their guys on proper nutrition, on proper supplementation. I guess as far as you could say like supplements go in an MRE, like you have what's called like a first strike bar, and it's kind of like a crappy imitation of a Cliff bar, maybe an RX bar. So it's like a crappy imitation of an RX bar, and like they kind of bill it as like it's supposed to be healthy, but it like the first ingredient is corn syrup. So like right off the bat, like not that healthy. And then they have like a kind of like a knockoff Gatorade powder that they'll put in an MRE. So there's just so much more room for somebody to come along and just innovate and make something that, I mean, there's no reason that every soldier, at least every combat soldier, shouldn't be taking like beta-alanine, creatine, Pico 2, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 other good ingredients every day, and just put that in a powder and put that in every MRE and just take it every day.
So you're talking about when people are just deployed and out in the field, right? Is that what you were focusing on? Okay.
Yeah.
But this is different than what's served like in a barracks if you're at boot camp or something like that. Correct?
Yeah. So when you're in garrison, when you're in that home environment, the military is called a DFAC dining facility. So DFAC for short. DFAC's really no different than like a college cafeteria is the best way to describe it. So I mean, there are plenty of healthy options. I mean, you could go to the salad bar, you could get some chicken, plenty of healthy options too. But then they have a dessert bar right around the corner with ice cream and cookies, and you can just as easily go the other route. So when you're in that home garrison environment, it's kind of up to the individual on your own willpower and how you can, I don't know, structure your diet yourself. You have that flexibility, but when you're deployed or when you're in a field environment and you're living off of MREs, I think that's where the biggest room for improvement is, because it is so bad right now, and it wouldn't take much to make it a lot better.
What you said in your speech about it was kind of like the breakdown of the calories that are involved in the whole MRE pack was impactful to me, because also when I think you also put it like in reference, like if you're, these guys in combat are actually moving quite long distances, right? And they're carrying however many pounds of equipment, like total calories actually really does matter. So like having a dextrose powder with electrolytes, like a lot of people will look at a bottle of Gatorade and say that's not healthy for kids to be drinking. When you're a 200-pound man and you're hiking 12 miles and you have 100 pounds of equipment on your back, electrolytes and dextrose isn't really the worst thing. Right. But there's a lot of other parts of that package where I thought there could have been better decisions being made. But then you started to break down like the weight of it, the durability of it, the way that they can transfer it. You start to look at like a logistics issue as well. And you start to realize like, oh, maybe some of this actually, these concessions are being made for a good reason. I know Mike would like every one of our soldiers to be eating a ribeye every single day, but like
me too.
Well, yeah, and of course that's of course best case scenario, but I guess it comes down. I get down to wondering like, how long are people deployed for? How long are how long are they on these stints? Like Mike and I were talking to Zach Flannery at Glaxon, one of their newer hires is a veteran, and he's talking about they were on a trip for, what was it, like 70 days where they didn't have water to shower with. Like, so you realize like what's the length of this time where they're doing this to their bodies?
You're not supposed to be eating MREs more than like 21 days in a row. Like that's supposed to be like the upper limit. Now, does it happen? Definitely. But that's supposed to be like the max limit for days in a row of MREs. And it's typically 3 MREs a day is what you're given. And that comes out to less than 4,000 calories. And Ben, to your point, like when you're moving underweight and, up and down mountains and carrying equipment in the heat, you're burning way more than 4,000 calories a day. So that's where, things like protein and supplements could become even more important when you're operating in a caloric deficit. That just increases the importance of protein and other supplements.
Yeah. The issue is that protein's expensive. So, and like, point. Honestly, this country does not seem serious about its protein sources. Like we are, of course, but on a national level, it seems like almost the opposite. And that's one of the most important things. And then just finding a way to pack as many calories in for these for these guys on the move is got to be just a major challenge. But do you foresee? So are the MREs? They're not created by the government, are they? They're probably third party contracts and all that. So it sounds like that's something that you'd like to disrupt at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I need a lot of capital to get that started up, but there's definitely an opportunity there if you could keep the cogs down relatively, and then find a way to prove that to the decision makers in the government that, hey, if we do this, if we supplement our infantry soldiers with creatine, beta alanine, Pico-2, citrulline every single day, it's going to significantly improve their performance over time and also keep the cogs down. Yeah, there could be a play there. That's why, again, I was presenting to a room full of people much smarter than myself. Hopefully somebody in that summit will take that idea and run with it.
There's got to be some reason for this, because I mean, militaries around the world have been using their men for studies for a very long time. A lot of our caffeine data is from our military. I'm sure you probably were there during this, but Sean Arendt at Rutgers was doing studies on T-creatine and dynamine on military members a couple years back. Like there's been a lot of data, and to me, I mean, if we supposedly want to have the strongest, best military in the world, like, it would make sense that we at some point have probably tried, what happens if we give our soldiers creatine. It seems almost like ridiculous that this isn't already happening. Or
I agree. Yeah, I don't know what that reason is, but I agree. It seems like it's too easy of a solution to not have had already.
Right.
Yeah.
What about caffeine? Obviously, energy drinks are a big thing out there. Is there caffeine provided within the MREs ever?
Yeah, actually, there's gum. There's caffeine chewing gum in the MREs. Every MRE comes with 2 pieces of caffeine chewing gum. So that's actually a pretty nice thing that they have in there.
I've actually seen some studies on caffeine-based gums. Okay, and now it makes sense, because I was like, I didn't realize there were that many commercial products to make it worth a study. But now looking back, that was probably
like you mentioned, energy drinks too, just huge in the military. Bang is the official sponsor of the United States Army, so not really.
Soldiers live off energy. The ones before that were called what? Ribbits?
Rippets were the ones that have like a cult following in the army, especially with the older people, because at one point those were the only energy drinks you could get in Iraq or Afghanistan. So like the older people in the army, like to this day, will like buy Rippets by the case via like D2C if they can even still find it. I don't even know if they make Rip It anymore.
That's awesome. That's interesting to me. So I guess because I want to get back to KOS and your move from Compound Solutions to there. Just before we get out of this section, I'd love to know your thoughts on, I'd say, supplements marketing to the military, because there's been a few stabs at this over the years, and I want you to take this in your unadulterated. So I don't want to say any brands and call them out, but it seems to me like a lot of them aren't even veterans themselves. So authenticity to me is a big deal. I've always been kind of interested in how someone like yourself would see people marketing towards that.
I talked about this in my speech a little bit too at the Sports and Active Nutrition Summit, was that some of the more popular brands in the military, I mean, number one, I would say is probably Redcon. They do an outstanding job of marketing to the military, and that's probably not, to Ben's point about authenticity, I don't think anybody involved with Redcon was in the military, but I know they are involved with a charity that gives back. So there is a little bit of authenticity to that piece, but I've always been more partial to brands where, the founders were in the military. BPN, Nick Bear, is somebody I kind of, I would say is a bit of a role model just from his hybrid athleticism, and then also what he does in the business world and the fact that he is a veteran as well. And then actually my buddy John, so that right there is John at UXO Supplements. That's his daily essentials.
I was going to mention him. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a good friend of mine. And actually that product is up there. When I was at Compound Solutions, that was the first project that I worked on that came to market. So we got our xylooligosaccharide in his daily essential multivitamin. And I worked with him on that. And that was actually the first product that I was able to work on that eventually came out. So that's some sentimental value to me right there. And the fact that John's a buddy too. So yeah, I do try to support those, the actual veteran owned companies a little more. Now what Redcon One does, I don't have a problem with it. Because they do give back. I know they're involved with some charities that do give back to the military. And then, kind of at the end of the day too, like I said at the beginning of this, was anybody who is giving people options to make good, healthy choices and be beneficial for their performance. Like, I'm cool with it at the end of the day. I know you guys are kind of big on like supporting people, but that is why I do also would rather, support veteran owned brands, especially when I'm buddies with John like that. Like that's definitely my go-to veteran owned company right there is UXO.
Did you know John before you worked with him for that project?
No, I didn't. And that's so we worked together on that project. And then this is another cool little caveat of a story, was that it would have been 2001, 2000. I'm losing track of the years now. It was a couple years ago. Memorial Day weekend, John through UXO Supplements was doing a charity event in Boise, Idaho, where he lives, and it's called Ruck 100. So his goal was to ruck 100 miles over Memorial Day weekend. And I think I invited myself. I was like, hey, dude, I'm coming to do this with you. I don't care. So I flew out to Boise, Idaho. And then over that Memorial Day weekend, we rucked 100 miles through all of Boise, which if you guys have never been to Boise, it's absolutely beautiful there. They have it's called the Green Belt. It's like a trail, like a bike trail that goes all the way through Boise up to the reservoir, like up the mountain to the reservoir. And it's beautiful the way that nature there is just like integrated into the city. So it was just an amazing route that we rucked that whole weekend, and we, rucked 100 miles. We carried a flag. We were all wearing our rucksacks and everything. And we ended up raising, I think, like $7,000 for Mission 22, which is a nonprofit organization that's aimed at increasing awareness for veteran suicide and trying to prevent that. So yeah, it's a great weekend. And it was cool to work with John on his product, and then also go out there and do that ruck with him.
We love John. He's a super cool guy. For anyone who's listening or watching who doesn't know John Klipstein, you're missing out, but if you don't know John, you might not be a lot on TikTok. John is actually like really successful at TikTok, which I think is hilarious because he's like
not what you would think.
Yeah. I mean, he's like this like veteran guy, he's kind of a gym guy, but he does these, what I like about him is he does these videos. It's like taking the competition's pre-workout and he talks about like other people's pre-workout, and he's created this like PricePlow platform while he owns a brand, and it is such an interesting thing going on. So that's really cool. I feel a lot of the same way. I don't really have a problem with what Redcon does because they do give a lot back to a lot of foundations. I've seen a lot of that, but I always like to ask veterans of that because some people I guess some people like feel like to have that motif or whatever, you should have earned that or something. But I also think Redcon has gotten bigger than just veterans as well.
Yeah,
Early on, they were very military themed. But yeah, UXO is a really cool brand that we've gotten to work with a few times.
Yeah, I send it's a great pre-workout. And then if you guys have ever had his blueberry cobbler protein is awesome. It has like little blueberry inclusions in it. Really good.
Cool.
And he nailed it.
Yeah. That's awesome. Cool. So, all right. So I really just wanted to ask you that stuff to kind of help you segue through. So Compound Solutions, you work at for how long?
I was with Compound for about 2 years. I was in sales. I was under Kyle Adams. I'm sure you guys know Kyle. He's the man. Couldn't have asked for a better person to learn sales from initially. I think Kyle could talk to the wrong number for like 20 minutes, and at the end of that call, he would be best friends with that person and probably be invited to that person's wedding or whatever. Like Kyle's just the man.
The first time I met Kyle, like I was that wrong number. I think he was just like, oh, you're Ben from PricePlow. And I just knew he was with Compound. We just talked for. I don't think I even knew his name, like for the whole conversation. Yeah. He's the easiest person to talk to. So I'm sure you learned a lot from him with sales.
Absolutely, I did. And then, I mean, obviously being, learning from Matt too, I kind of feel like anytime Matt talked to the sales team, it was like pencil and paper out, like taking notes, like I'm back in college, just because he's just a genius and a wealth of information. And then Chaz Jones was on our sales team too at that time. He's with Jocko now. So it was a great team. I really loved working at Compound Solutions. I kind of compared it to like, football guy, obviously. I kind of compared it to like getting drafted by like the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like you're some like nobody 6th round draft pick out of college, and then you're with this like legacy team all of a sudden. And now when it comes to ingredient suppliers, like Compound Solutions is definitely, a legacy ingredient supplier. So I just felt like I was like with the best team I could possibly be at in my very first job in this industry. So I was very fortunate with that. But I mean, I did kind of have to work to earn it. I mean, I worked for as an internship, unpaid, and then that turned into a job offer because I proved myself. So
yeah, Mike and I obviously we kind of like share notes with each other on the side just so we can keep stuff. But he noted one thing that I've always said is that like Compound Solutions was like the company that took an ingredient and made it like a household name, like T-Creen and Dynamine. Like I always make this joke, but I had friends during that period that would say, I need a pre-workout with T-Creen, and they wouldn't even know what T-Creen was, but they knew they needed it. And you guys created like FOMO. Yeah. And so it's
Spencer,
funny.
You don't realize what this podcast just did for between Ben and I's personal memes going on. Like I'm never going to hear the end of this because this is a bit off topic, but when we talk to an ingredient supplier, Ben always uses the story. Like you want to create an ingredient that even the customer wants and, knows that they need. They don't even know what it does, but they need it. We were looking for that effect, and T-Creen and Dynamine, especially T-Creen at that one point was that thing. So when you said what you said, it just completely validated everything Ben said on like, I'd say over a dozen phone calls. And so now I'm just going to, it was a big win for Ben. So there you go. Behind the scenes PricePlow stuff. So good job.
But yeah, I'm sure like Spencer, you can appreciate like you're a B2B sales rep at a supplement company selling to other supplement companies, right? But the cool thing that Compound Solutions was able to do is they were able to impact B2C. They were able to tell customers that they, like whatever. And it's funny. We do that a lot. We work with supplement companies, everything, but we have to speak to customers. So I have an immense amount of respect for what Compound Solutions was able to do there, because they took end consumers who like really have almost no horse in this race. Like the end consumers are not able to pick and choose ingredients. They buy formulas, but somehow they got them to create demand with companies that they needed these ingredients. I mean,
they almost made T-Creen like bigger than the company itself. It was the face of the company. Sure. Just the flagship ingredient, the same way brands have flagship products.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I would bet a decent amount of money that more people know what T-Creen, Dynamine, or Pico 2 are than know what Compound Solutions is.
Well, the craziest thing to me is so often people don't even realize that T-Creen is actually Theocrene. It's like Band-Aid and a bandage. Like everybody knows the brand name instead of knowing the actual thing. And that's a perfect example of Theocrene.
Yeah, when I worked at NutriBio, we had our like R&D flavor guy would always call it Theocrene, and I was like, "Dude, you're saying it wrong. It's Theocrene." And then I was wrong. So, but anyway, the reason I was asking how long you were at Compound is how did you end up coming to KOS from that?
Yeah, another just interesting rabbit hole of a story. So our chief revenue officer at KOS is a guy named Derek Deerwater, who's been in the CPG game for like 30 years. He is like the crafty old veteran. He was with Nature's Bounty. He was with Pfizer. He was with Conagra Foods. Previous to KOS, he was the president at a supplement company called Nature, and he built them up and sold them off. And then now he's the chief revenue officer at KOS. And he actually played football at the same college that I played football at. Now he's a good bit older. He played football back in the 80s there, but we just knew each other from that alumni network. He knew I was in sales in the sports nutrition world. And then when he kind of maxed out what one person could do in a sales team at KOS, and he had the opportunity to build out his sales team underneath him, we got in touch, and he just kind of made me an offer I couldn't refuse, to leave KOS, or to leave Compound Solutions and come to KOS. Just from a financial standpoint, I literally could not turn down his offer. And it's been great. It was definitely tough leaving Compound Solutions. Like I said, an amazing company to work for. But I really love what I do now too. I love the role that I have now. I oversee all sales in 19 states, everything Chicago and East and DC and North pretty much. So I sell us into retail. I manage the product on shelf once it's in retail. I do, category reviews with the category managers at our retailers. I oversee 6 different brokerage firms in my region. I travel to trade shows and events. But yeah, I really love the role I have now. I have a lot of autonomy, and a lot of trust to just go and get the job done. And I've been fortunate that I've been doing pretty well since I started here. We've rolled out into a lot of new retailers here in the Northeast. And then even nationally, we just rolled out into Dick's Sporting Goods, which is awesome for me, being involved with sports my whole life. Dick's Sporting Goods is headquartered here in Pittsburgh. So I was able to go to their headquarters and, present to a room full of their decision makers, and they decided to bring us in. And I remember growing up, going to Dick's Sporting Goods with my family, at the start of every sports season every year. And, full circle moment. Now I have a product on shelf there that I put it there, going to their headquarters and pitching to them. So it's really cool, full circle moment for me.
So that's an awesome story. I think Ben maybe had something to say. Did you, Ben?
I was gonna keep following the conversation. So Mike, if you have something, go for it.
Yeah. Okay. So this will get us a little bit into cost. How do you pitch this brand to Dick's Sporting Goods? Like, I don't want you to violate any NDAs or anything, but can you give us the Dick's pitch?
Well, yeah. So, we have great data on our velocities in conventional and FDM channels. So you take that data. Now going into a sports retailer is a little bit different than a grocery store, but data is still data. So we knew our velocities. We knew how our product moves on shelf. Dick's Sporting Goods was at the time looking to specifically bring in a vegan plant-based protein. They already have several whey protein options. So they were specifically looking for a plant-based protein. We were up against, some of our other typical competitors. I honestly think they might have given me like a little hometown favor, because when I went in there heavy, like, hey, I'm from Pittsburgh. I grew up going to Dick's Sporting Goods all the time with my family. This would be so cool to me to get one of my products on shelf here. So I definitely went in heavy with that hometown story, and that part of it paid off. But we also obviously have the data on our performance to back it up. So I don't think they were taking too big of a risk on me.
I really like KOS's brand overall, and I love that they let you have a personal brand as a part of that brand, because to me, like, Spencer Lynn is a very powerful brand on its own, but
it sounds so weird to hear, but
but it's great. I mean, I don't know. We just podcasted with Chris Waldrum yesterday. We haven't released it yet, but we had a long talk about that as well, because like what he does is going to be a personal brand as well. People are going to know him for what he does, and I think it is great that they allow you to express yourself in the way that you do on LinkedIn. Well, I mean, I know it's not up to them to allow that, but it works with the brand.
I know what you mean, though. Yeah.
Yeah. It really is synergistic with what you end up going and doing. I mean, during your talk at the summit, you weren't pushing costs. There were some very nice little areas where it did fit well, but there wasn't like a push to it. And I don't know. It's funny. Like I knew Spencer before I knew KOS, and that is a powerful thing in itself. Mm-hmm. But I enjoy the brand overall. Early on, you were talking about it might not appeal to a lot of PricePlow community, and that I hope is something that we're leaving. I don't want our community to just be heavy sports nutrition anymore. And I think we've made some moves to appeal to a larger group, but I do think that KOS appeals to, like, you first said, we were first talking about women mostly, but then you started talking about like the brother-in-law or whatever. Yeah. I think that while you guys might have like a softer look than, like a hardcore brand, you're not all that soft in itself. Like I think that general health, like general physical preparedness, like that's something that is compelling for a lot of people. And I think you guys are nailing that.
Yeah, it's more earthy than feminine. Is kind of what I would put. So that can definitely appeal to a pretty good audience for sure.
Yeah. And I think that is part of the reason we do so well in retail, conventional grocery, natural gourmet grocery. Our product, it jumps off the shelf. It catches the eye, especially in comparison to like our biggest competitors, which are your Orgain, your Vega, your Purely Inspired. And if you look at their labels compared to ours, I mean, they're very bland, very corporate, very like just buttoned up, and ours are fun. They have little cartoons on them. So they definitely do a good job of catching the eye of the consumers in a retail space. Our labels are, so every SKU has its own unique artwork on it, which is pretty cool. It's all done by a guy named Juan Montez. He's like an award-winning doodle artist. They all have these little fun doodles on them. So it's definitely really cool packaging. It kind of matches our company's personality.
Yeah, I think that really matters when you're trying to appeal to people who, first off, don't want, like insert edgy pre-workout name, right? But also don't want to be buying whatever the soft effeminate version is. They want something that just is good for them. It's kind of like, it's like Liver King, but without the weirdness. It's earthy, it's relatable, and that it's a good choice, but you don't feel like you need to hide it in your pantry.
Yeah, I know what you mean. That's a good point. It's cool you said earthy too. We just got into Public Lands, which is our first outdoor retailer. And they took we have a gusset bag version of the protein as well, and they took those gusset bags. They're eco-friendly. They're 25% post-consumer recyclable material. So that was kind of the story we told there that got us into Public Lands, which is a outdoor retailer. So
yeah, so is that that's like an REI type thing?
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting. I always find it so interesting, these placements that are popping up in like Dick's and REI and stuff like that, because that's the last place I would buy supplements.
Yeah, I guess that's my question to you. How much do these kinds of companies move the needle compared to crushing it on? They're doing well on Amazon or grocery. Like, does Dick's really move that much protein?
We have a pretty even split between D2C, Amazon, and retail, just in terms of velocities and overall revenue. The best channels are definitely your FDM and your natural gourmet grocer. We're gonna find out. We just launched in March in Dick's, so it's been relatively we haven't been there that long yet. But we do think it'll do well. I mean, Dick's Sporting Goods is leaning heavily into their sports nutrition. They have pretty flushed out sports nutrition sets in at least 150. Well, no, we're rolling out into 115 locations initially, and then they have fleshed out sports nutrition sets in 550 of like 700 plus total Dick's Sporting Goods. So, Ghost is in Dick's Sporting Goods. They have Optimum Nutrition. They have BSN. So they do have, like I said, some pretty fleshed out sports nutrition sets, and they're leaning heavily into it going forward. And then your places like your Wegmans, Giant Eagle, Hy-Vee, H-E-B, they also have great sports nutrition sets too, and they've significantly improved those selections over the past couple of years.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of people very excited about these companies leaning into the better quality, the better assortments. And one of the things that I keep hearing is that these grocery end caps and grocery selections are like better looking than retail and sports supplements. Like these guys design planograms that look way better than anywhere else, and it pops off the shelves and it really grabs people's attention. My worry comes down to like consumer education or customer service in these stores, which I think really plays into like having flagship products, not having 75 SKUs in there, just having your protein, your whatever it is, your easily digestible and conveyable products that people can understand when they look at it.
And you mentioned the planograms. Brand blocks are huge. Anytime you can get a brand block is such a big win when all your products are right there on top of each other on the shelf. That way, your loyal consumers can find you, and then you're so much more likely to catch the eye of somebody who's never seen your product before too. So those planograms are so important, and a lot of the category managers at these retailers, especially the Wegmans category manager, he does his homework. He is tuned in. He might listen to PricePlow. He is tuned into sports nutrition, into supplements. He knows ashwagandha. He knows what pre-workouts are popular. Like it's fun to go into meetings with him because he definitely knows his stuff.
Yeah. It's very interesting to see how these category managers in different industries, ours and outside of it, treat this industry. We were talking with a brand who had lost a major athlete a couple months back and went into a pretty major retailer, and they kind of got dropped in the conversation that they lost this athlete. And category managers, and this is within our own industry, we're like, we don't even know who that is. But like it is. So I asked the question, like, is it important for these people to know trends? Is it important for them to know maybe people or whatever? Like, because if they're watching the velocity of their own products, sometimes these retailers become their own little ecosystems on their own, where they're kind of like immune to like the recent TikTok trend because they have their own sales culture on their own.
It's a good point. And it's cool too. I mean, it's part of my job is to do my homework and to know the category manager as best I can. Because some, in some of the smaller regional grocers, like the conventional grocers, it might be, a 55-year-old woman who is in charge of HBC, health and beauty care. The terminology matters too. Some retailers call their set sports nutrition. Some call it health and beauty care. They just kind of lump the protein with the toothpaste and it's all the same thing. And it's a 55-year-old lady who just kind of handles all of it. So when I go in a meeting with her, I know I have to sell the product this way, and she probably cares more about the data than the actual ingredients. She cares more about the velocities than the actual USDA certification of our protein powder. Whereas when I'm going into a meeting with the buyer at Wegmans, who I know is in touch with sports nutrition and supplements, he wants to know about our ashwagandha and how much caffeine is in that pre-workout product that you guys have. And, can you show me your USDA or your USDA certifications? And so it's just, kind of tailoring your sales pitch to what category manager you're going into as well is also important.
That's awesome. So preparation is key for these kinds of things.
Oh, yeah.
How do you get in these guys' door? Like, how do you get the attention of these?
That's a great question. There is no one answer to that. I've done anything as far as cold messaging people on LinkedIn, cold calling the headquarters stores themselves. And then that's the hard way to do it. The easy way to do it is you have brokers that already have established relationships with the category managers, and then you just lean heavily on your brokers for that. But it runs the entire spectrum of cold calls to broker relationships and everything in between. Kind of a cool story. I won't say the name of the retailer, but there's one retailer that I've really been trying to get into for a while. And I knew who the category manager was there that I needed to target. She wasn't responding to anything that I was doing. Found out that she was currently pregnant. She was on pregnancy leave. Don't ask me how I found that out, but she was on pregnancy leave. We had a little KOS maternity gift basket made up for her. We made her a little KOS onesie and put in some samples, and wrote her a nice card, mailed it off to her. And guess who has a meeting in May with this retailer that we've been trying to get into for a while? So I mean, it is literally, there is no one answer on how you get your foot in the door. You just get your foot in the door.
Love that.
You are a true salesman. That's awesome. Thanks for telling that story. Don't get too many ideas out there, folks. But no, I figured you were going to mention LinkedIn first. That's where you're quite prolific. It seems to be a stud social network for you. I'm not sure if you're doing anything else on other social networks, but can you, I would like, we've also recently noticed, probably a lot later than you figured it out, that LinkedIn is a great place for us to meet like minds. And over the last couple of years, kind of realized that all my friends are in this industry. My Facebook friends, it's really LinkedIn friends at this point for me. And it took me way too long to figure that out. So how did you start doing all this? So I'm looking at you, everyone's got 500 plus connections, but you have 2,600 followers as well beyond all the connections. And for a guy who's out there, you're hustling, selling. And so it's just like, I think people love watching the story. So how did this all happen?
Yeah, I mean, to Ben's point, that personal brand, I mean, it definitely pays off. I just kind of hustling on LinkedIn, and it is powerful when you learn how to leverage LinkedIn. You can do some pretty incredible things with it. As far as reach goes, it's definitely my favorite social media platform by far. Like, I mean, I'm active on Instagram as well, but LinkedIn is definitely my favorite by far. What's cool is whenever you can see how many impressions your posts get, but what's more than that is it tells you exactly who likes your post. So, I mean, if I post, we just launched into Dick's Sporting Goods and I post a little cool graphic that our marketing team makes, I can see, hey, the category manager at Academy Sports just liked it. I probably need to reach out to them pretty soon to see if, can capitalize on that momentum at Dick's Sporting Goods into Academy Sports, for example. So yeah, it is very powerful. I try to post, 3 times a week. I typically aim for like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But I'm not going to force it either. If I don't have anything good to post, I won't post. So I don't really think that much into it, but I definitely do try to use it for everything that it's worth. Especially, like I said, seeing who viewed my profile, seeing who's liking my post. If it's category managers or buyers at, target retailers, that is good information to be able to have. And LinkedIn is awesome for being able to provide that.
I love LinkedIn just for little notes of things that I've thought of that day, like little anecdotes or little experiences from business. It seems like my biggest posts are not my things that I think are going to be huge, but just the ones that, I share a thought that I had from the day, and people can just relate to it. Because I think to be honest and fair, like there are probably about 3 people on LinkedIn that have a similar job to what Mike and I do.
Mm-hmm.
It's Ryan Buckeye and Shane Smith. And so like sharing hyper specific things, like most people can't appreciate that kind of stuff, but sharing like relatable things about, starting my Monday with a cold plunge, or, like the little things about business. I love sharing that with other people and working together. My least favorite part is the cold calling on LinkedIn.
So I mean, being in sales, like you got to do it sometimes. But so the thing I will say about that is, and I get sold to, and I'm in sales, right? So people will cold DM me, and I'm in sales. Like if you're trying to sell to a salesman, you probably didn't do your homework, and that bothers the crap out of me, man. That is my biggest pet peeve, is when somebody's trying to sell me logistics or trying to sell me shipping or trying to sell me packaging. No, I'm in sales. Why are you trying to sell to a salesman?
Yeah.
So that is what I will say, is do your homework and make sure you are targeting the right person. Make sure you are targeting the decision maker. And if you're not, and I've done this in the past too, where I'll say, hey, I know you're not my target, but can you point me in the right direction? Can you get me in contact with the buyer that I'm looking for?
Yeah.
So that I've done. But like when somebody's trying to sell to a salesman, they just didn't do their homework, and that's where I get annoyed. And that's what you're making salesmen everywhere look bad. And come on, man.
Yeah, I've had people email me asking about, they really liked the location that PricePlow now has as an office, and they're asking about cleaning services for our beautiful new building. And I love to ask them what the address is of this office that they've like. I love going along with it, but I mean, I don't know. My pronouns on LinkedIn are don't cold call, and they still cold call. So at this point, it's just kind of part of. I also think I got the premium membership to LinkedIn, which I don't know if you did that yet, but I got so much more spam once I started doing that. Yeah, but we've also done really well with business because of LinkedIn. So it's one of those things where it just comes with the territory. How do you use do you use LinkedIn most often for finding leads for sales, or have there been other benefits that you've gotten from it?
I would say definitely most often for finding leads for sales. But yeah, there have been plenty of other benefits from it too. Kind of like you said, it's in today's mostly virtual world, LinkedIn is like what was the water cooler in the office. Like there's plenty of people out there giving good information, giving good tips, just offering up their free experience and free knowledge. I mean, I've definitely learned a lot from LinkedIn. And how to manage CPG and how to sell CPG. There are plenty of people out there that have really informative, really detailed posts. Mark Samuel is a guy at I1 Organics. I don't know.
I was just thinking of him.
Yeah, he's the man on LinkedIn. Some of his posts are incredibly insightful, incredibly deep. He's also kind of funny too, so it's a little bit of a win-win. Yeah.
He's a awesome. Good follower there. Yeah, I love following him. He does a lot of cool things, and he's so transparent about his business.
Yeah.
That's one thing I love about LinkedIn is people will share their wins. They'll show their losses. But some people will share like legit hard numbers on how they're doing. And Mark is one of those guys that will be super transparent. He just admitted like a couple of weeks ago, he's like, I don't have a huge marketing budget. I don't have all of these opportunities, but this is what I do have. And I really enjoy his take on stuff. So if you're into business and on LinkedIn, he's a great follow.
Yeah, in today's world, where you can kind of teach yourself anything off of YouTube, you can also teach yourself a ton about business just off of LinkedIn and following the right people who are transparent with that information, like you said.
For sure. All right, so I know Mike wants to start moving towards the 100-miler. So
I think we were supposed to talk about that way back at the beginning. We just jumped down 7
No,
other.
we're good. Yeah, no, business first, of course. But yeah, you're so busy. How do you even find time to train for? I don't even know where to begin. Like, what you? I assume you've run a marathon before this, or multiple.
Yeah.
And
I've run 3 marathons. I've done, I don't know, maybe 10 or so triathlons. I did a full distance Ironman,
nice.
which is also a pretty difficult thing to do. I did. This was my 3rd ultra marathon. So technically, an ultra marathon is anything over 26.2. Anything more than a marathon is considered an ultra marathon. So I've done 37 miler, a 50 miler, and then this 100 miler. So I mean, I trained for it specifically, I would say, for the last 6 months before. So I ran all winter, which actually ended up being very beneficial because it dropped down to 17 degrees overnight during the 100 miler. But like I said, I ran all winter, so I was kind of prepared for that. I would typically put in, like, I don't know, anywhere from like 40 to 60 miles a week. And then I would also still lift weights like three or 4 days a week too, just to try to keep some strength and some weight and size on as much as I could when I was running that much. But yeah, I just kind of tapered up for it and then just handled it the day of. I mean, I knew what I was getting myself into. The 50 miler that I did about a year ago, it was tough, but I knew as soon as I finished the 50 miler, I was like, I could go way further than that. And that's kind of what, started snowballing this idea to do the 100 miler.
Okay, so how many people, is it broken into age groups or any of that stuff, or is it just like a bunch of people? How many were there?
Yeah, so there was no age groups on this one. 46 people started it, 17 people finished. I finished 5th overall, so 5th out of 17 or 46 or however you want to measure that thing. Thank you. Yeah, it got pretty nasty overnight. So I mean, I ran probably the first, I don't know, I want to say 60 miles and I was fine. And then sun went down and it dropped down to 17 degrees and it snowed like snow squalls intermittently throughout the night. And I mean, to the point where my water bottle froze on me while I was out there. My shoelaces literally froze. I remember it after the night was over, it was maybe about 6 a.m. I'm maybe 80 miles in at this point. And I remember I got to an aid station and I sat down. And so first of all, big shout out to my dad. He kind of crewed me for the whole thing. He would meet me at aid stations, try to take care of me as best as he could.
Was he like driving alongside
driving?
But he's not pacing. He's
no, driving. Yeah. And then he would just meet me at an aid station. But anyway, so we get to an aid station around 6 a.m. as the sun's starting to come up and about 80 miles in at this point. And I remember sitting down thinking, I need to change my socks. They're wet all night. My feet are just wrecked right now. I need to, fresh pair of socks is going to do me wonders right now. So I sat down in a chair and I'm trying to take my shoes off. I could not untie my shoes. My shoelaces were literally frozen solid. I'm like, Dad, try to untie my shoes. He couldn't untie my shoes. My shoelace, they were frozen solid. So I was like, screw it, not changing my socks. Got back up and just kept going.
Okay, are there any like crazy rules? Like, could you just rip the shoes off and did you have a backup pair of shoes, or was
I could have? I didn't have a backup pair of shoes. So no,
okay.
And like I said, I mean, those shoes were not coming out. The shoelaces were not coming unfrozen anytime soon. It was nasty overnight.
So you were running overnight. Like, were there any breaks, or was there? Did you have a tent with you, or this is just walking, running?
Yeah,
throughout 17 degrees.
Yeah, just going from the starting line to the finish line, 100 miles. You can stop if you want, you can take a break if you want, but the clock is still going. There is no like designated break time. You just go indefinitely until you finish. And there are aid stations. There are aid stations about every 5 to 8 to 10 miles. There would be an aid station that was manned by volunteers all throughout the night. So, but that almost became a trap because you're out there in the cold. It's 17 degrees. You've been running for 20 hours at this point. You're hungry, you're tired, you're freezing cold, and you get to an aid station and they have like a little tent in the middle of the woods, and they have heaters in there and there's food in there and there's some nice lady taking care of you with everything. So you sit down, and so many people would just go into those aid stations and they would get trapped in there, but they would tap out. I'm not going back out there after getting warm and getting food, and this lady's taking care of me. So those aid stations almost became a trap. I would try to stay no more than 5 to 10 minutes at an aid station. Just so I didn't fall victim to that trap, because I think that's why a lot of people ended up quitting.
What kind of intervals did you have between these breaks? Like, how were you stopping at every aid station?
Yeah, I would definitely. I mean, well, at first, the first, like I said, 60 miles, no, I wouldn't stop at every one because I was feeling pretty fine. But then throughout the night, I would definitely stop at every one to try to warm up, make sure my fingers don't go completely numb. Um, Try to get some type of nutrition because at that point too, you're so behind on calories. You're just trying to cram anything into your mouth that you can. And then there's another thing overnight was the food at the aid station started to freeze too. So I remember pulling into one aid station and seeing an orange peel or sliced oranges on the table. I'm like, oh, it's gonna be so good right now. And I grabbed it, threw it in my mouth, and just crunch. It was ice orange. It was like an icicle orange. So didn't really hit the spot, but yeah, so those aid stations, yeah, I would try to stay no more than 5 to 10 minutes at each one.
So you did like 60 miles, like in a chunk. Was
Pretty
that
much
like
nonstop, yeah, for the first 60. And
what
then
were the next kind of like chunks like from there?
yeah, so that's a good question because then that's when it became nighttime too. So I would say maybe just try to knock it out like 5 mile chunks at a time at that point. Like the last overnight. And then when the sun came back up the next morning, you're able to go, 10, 15 miles again at like a chunk at a time. But overnight, yeah, I would definitely stop and take my time as much as possible.
So one thing that I'm super curious about, which I don't know if anyone else is going to help anyone else, but like what kind of layering were you using? Like how did you structure that?
Yeah, great question too. So I literally wore like 6 layers probably. I had like a base layer that was like a very tight, like Under Armour type shirt. Then I had like a long sleeve shirt over top of that, and then like a thicker long sleeve shirt over top of that. And then overnight I had like a windbreaker jacket, and then I even put on a hoodie overnight too, just to because I knew it was gonna be nasty cold. So I was wearing like 6 layers at one point.
Yeah,
and then
you have to.
The sun came up the next morning. I ended up ditching the hoodie, and I think I finished wearing the windbreaker jacket and everything underneath it. But yeah, definitely layered up overnight.
Did you have a structure to your nutrition but going into this? Did you have any idea during the race what you were going to be doing, or were you just kind of grabbing whatever was at these aid stations?
I definitely had a plan at first, but it's that famous Mike Tyson quote: "Everybody has a plan to get punched in the mouth." So you're 70 miles in. It's 2 a.m. in the morning, and you're at an aid station, and there's pretzels and peanut butter sandwiches and pickles and those hammer nutrition goo gels, and you're just shoving everything into your mouth at that point just to try to get some type of calories down. Yeah, I think nutrition wise I held up pretty good. I did rely a lot more on the gels than I thought I would, just because like they were just so easy to shove a handful of them in your pocket and you could eat them anywhere. They're quick, and they actually didn't freeze, so they didn't freeze solid overnight, so that was nice too.
I think the real question a lot of people are going to have is how much caffeine did you consume during this time?
Oh, a lot. And then actually back to what we talked about earlier, I had T-creatinine as well. So I still have, from when I worked at Compound Solutions, I still had like a pill bottle full of
the blended pills.
Yeah. So just a pill bottle full of T-creatinine and caffeine, just that we used as a proof of concept there. And I popped probably, I don't know, 6 of those throughout the course of the race. So,
yeah, that's awesome.
Awesome. So what about so many more questions. Okay, so what was your like pre-race nutrition? Did you load up like crazy, or you maybe don't want to be too heavy, but you're going to need a crap load of calories? What was the plan?
Yeah, that's a great question. You guys are asking, I mean, the perfect questions. I figured you guys would. Sports nutrition and supplements. Yeah, perfect question. But yeah, I didn't want to load up too heavy. I think that morning, the night before, I obviously ate a huge carb heavy dinner. But that morning, I think all I had was like a bagel with peanut butter and like a protein bar or something. I didn't really go in heavy that morning because, to your point, I did not want stuff in my stomach sloshing around that whole morning. So my focus was more so to eat continuously throughout the day, as opposed to just like load up that morning.
And so when you came out of the gates, like, was there an official starter with the starter gun, all that stuff? 46 people go out. What was about your pace starting? Like, what was your marathon pace for the first in the beginning?
Yeah, I would say I probably knocked out the first 60 miles, probably like a 9-minute per mile pace.
Awesome.
Which is, it's not that fast. I mean, that's a very slow. I mean, I could go, like I said, I probably just went 60 miles at that pace. That's a pretty comfortable pace for me. I could run at that pace for a very long time. And then when the sun went down too, that brings in, your visibility is gone. So you have your headlamp, obviously, but that's like 20 feet of visibility max. So, I mean, you're really kind of power hiking throughout the night. Now there were points definitely throughout the night where if it was flat, I would run, or even like a small downhill I would run. But by that point, yeah, it's a lot of power walking throughout the night just because you really can't see. You're also, this is a cross country course. You're in the woods on a single lane hiking trail. So like you got to pay attention to make sure you're staying on the trail. They did have it marked pretty well where every 50 yards or so, they would have a little reflective flag planted in the ground. I mean, you still have to stay alert because there were periods throughout the night, especially 2, 3, 4 a.m. where like you're kind of zoning out. You're like, you feel like zombie mode where you're like falling asleep as you're walking. So you really have to like stay alert and make sure you're staying on the right path and everything.
Did at any point you consider, I don't know, doing this in a warm season?
I think, I mean, I definitely would have improved my time by several hours if I would have done this in better weather. But I think, I mean, to be honest, I kind of welcomed it. I knew it was going to make it that much more difficult. If you're going to run 100 miles, I mean, you're obviously not looking for easy at that point anyway. So yeah, I was kind of happy. I didn't think that there would only be 17 people that finished it out of the 46 that started, but that was definitely because of the cold, because of the harsh conditions overnight, played a huge factor for that.
Were you like, yeah, were you all alone the whole time, or was there any camaraderie? Like, did you get passed? Was there anyone passed? Anyone you passed, or is it just like ghosts out there?
There was one point. So, I mean, during the day, you're kind of by yourself. It's not that big of a deal. But there was one point throughout the night where there were 2 other runners that were kind of running at the same pace as me throughout the night. And we kind of hung with each other from like one aid station to the next. So for about 5 miles. But then they actually spent a shorter time at that aid station than I did. So they kept going and I lost them. So for the whole rest of the night, I was by myself. And then I ended up passing one of them back the next morning. So I must not have been that far behind him, but yeah, for I would say probably 80% of the night I was out there by myself. Yeah.
Awesome. So when you passed them, like, how are these like really competitive? Are you like running to win, or are you running to survive? Like, me, when I passed them, I'd be like, "Hey, good morning." Like, or was it like not like that?
No, it was pretty friendly. The guy who won, it was incredible. He did it in 22 hours. So I did it in 29 hours, 20 minutes or whatever, 5th place. The guy who won did it in like just under 23 hours and he beat the course record by 2 hours. So this guy was nuts. He actually, I didn't get to talk to him or anything, but everybody at the finish line said he actually went temporarily blind, which is actually not that uncommon in a 100-miler. It's some type of edema. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but you can look it up. It's a real thing. But he actually went temporarily blind for like the last 10 or so miles where he could like barely open his eyes, and he did this thing in like 23 hours. So he was obviously very competitive, but Mike, to your point, everybody else was kind of just like, hey, we're in this together. We're in this suck together. We're going to be friendly. We're going to help each other out. So when I passed him the next morning, he was hurt and like his knee was all jacked up. So I was like, dude, you all right? And we kind of talked. He's like, yeah, I fell last night pretty hard. My knee's all jacked up right now. And it's like, well, we only got like 6 miles left, man. You're going to finish. Hang in there. And then I passed. So it was friendly at that point. But the guy who won was obviously in it to win. He damn went blind.
So what about?
I have to ask, do they drug test for this? Like, is this drug test? No. I don't know. It sounds like the kind of thing like EPO would like really help with or something. I don't know. I'm like anything. I feel like this is like Tour de France, but like running and cold and like it's terrible. Like I
thought you meant maybe like are they drug testing us for like psychedelics to make sure we're in our right mind when we sign up?
I mean that for sure too. I mean, I don't know. It's just the concept to me. I'm also thinking of all of the ways that we could game this with supplements, like all of like how could we put you in a more comfortable state for this? And how
are there any supplements that have data for keeping you warm overnight? Is there anything else?
There's got to be ways to raise body temperature. I mean, I don't know how significant it is with this kind of situation. But like,
there's definitely thermogenic ingredients, and there are, but to what point and how long will it last, and how much can it work? But
I assume the guy that won this does a lot of these. Like this is like his thing, right? So like to me, like I think there's room for improvement on like the like you didn't know. I don't think like I think the people that are really good at this probably really really understand like clothing for this stuff, like for the cold and stuff, and like there's probably like a lot of nuances to shaving off another half hour, right?
Yeah, well, especially over such a long distance because everything adds up. I mean, like the weight of your clothes adds up over 100 miles. Like
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you're talking about a lot of variables. I mean, the first thing I thought of was like if you had done this in the springtime, you would have probably saved at
Hours.
least an hour, right? Like, yeah, that's a huge. I mean, that's just risk on its own. Honestly, it's not even like a hurdle. It's like your health is at risk there.
Yeah, yeah.
It's funny to me though that like it's not funny, but it's interesting that many people dropped because like I imagine the natural course is doing Ironmans before this, right? So like
yeah.
to me, Ironmans are like that's one of the craziest things on earth. My brother did one, and like that is wild to me. Like so to have what 46 people down to 17, like that's a lot of people who I imagine have done other hard things.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's a great point. Is like it's not just 46 people off the couch; it's 46 endurance athletes. And
Yeah,
it's
only it seems like the cold was probably a huge factor.
For sure. Yeah,
not everyone's built for it.
For sure.
Funny.
Yeah.
Where was this? Did you mention where it was?
It was here near Pittsburgh, Raccoon Creek State Park, which is maybe, I don't know, an hour outside of the city.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible.
Awesome. And how did you recover? How are you? I assume you were plenty banged up. That one guy hurt his knee. You must have been some level of a mess. Can you get into that?
So I mean, I'm fully recovered now. I'm definitely good to go now. It took me probably a week to feel like 80% again. Yeah, so I mean, the recovery part wasn't too bad. There were weird things that were happening though. Like my left hamstring down to like the top of my calf was like purple, and almost like I had like tore it off the bone, but I wasn't running fast enough at any point to pull a hamstring. So like I don't know if it was just like overuse or what, but the whole back of my left leg was purple and bruised, which was weird. And then I had really bad indigestion for like the first 2 or 3 days. I woke up the first 2 or 3 nights with like cold sweats in the middle of the night. And I had no appetite at all for like the first 4 or 5 days, which I thought was the weirdest part. I thought I was going to be ravenously hungry after I finished, but I was like not hungry at all. That was the weirdest part to me.
That's ironically like in line with the like my highest level of like powerlifting was like nausea, lack of appetite, and just like almost like CNS like over fatigue.
Yeah.
That seems to be the case with some of us leaner types too. Like when we really over endure ourselves, the appetite kind of just shuts down. I find this with my daughter and I going swimming, and I work her pretty hard, and like I'm like, you have to eat, otherwise she's just a mental train wreck. And I see it happens to a few of us, so it's kind of I don't know, it's an interesting case. And so did you try to force food in? Or
I knew I had to, I knew it would help me recover as well. And then what I also did, I kind of did like even like literally the next day, my wife and I, we have a spin bike in the basement. So I hopped on the spin bike for an hour just to move my legs, just to get some blood flow, just to try to get back to normal as fast as possible. And yeah, Ben, to your point, it kind of seems like anybody, regardless if it's in like extreme endurance or extreme strength, when you're pushing your body to the max like that, like you are going to have your CNS be pretty banged up afterwards.
Yeah, Tim Gritzman turned me on to choline post-workout for these things because you'll obviously deplete a lot of acetylcholine from either muscle activation or just running, obviously. But that was a big one for me. I would have this like dull brain fog at first, and if I really pushed it hard, I'd like lose, like my CNS would just be fried. And I got a lot of my appetite back when I started doing that, but also electrolytes post-workout. And this is a big thing that Stan Efferding had apparently gotten from, I think, Conor McGregor's nutritionist, was that like however much liquid you lost during your workout and during a fight camp, this is obviously a little more insignificant, but like you have to replenish that with electrolytes, that poundage. And he would actually put like fructose and glucose in a mixture with it, as well as caffeine to increase absorption. A lot of people don't know that caffeine increases absorption of electrolytes. So there's obviously no good opportunity for you during your 100 miles to replenish anything that you've been losing. So
yeah,
I think those peanut butter sandwiches were probably the best thing you did.
Yeah, definitely helped the mental side too. Everybody loves a good PB&J. So
yeah, seriously. So I am up to date. I'm glad we got in like the military stuff. Mike, did you have any other questions?
No, I'm blown boy, congratulations. What's your next race? What are you going to do?
Yeah, I think I'm enduranced out for now. Honestly, I really think I've been starting to get back into lifting heavier again, and that's been fun. So I think I kind of want to go in the opposite direction. I love just kind of pushing my body as far as I can in either direction, and seeing what happens. I'm always up for new challenges. I kind of say that I have like fitness ADD. I can't stay focused on like one thing for too long. It's always like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? So yeah, I don't know. I might go in the other direction and start to lift some heavy weights again. I don't know. We'll see.
Totally
Awesome.
get that. Putting yourself into different situations, but like putting the same amount of passion into it is
exactly. It's always a
something
new
that I do
challenge.
love.
It keeps things fresh, right? You don't get bored that way.
Well, yeah, and I like, as someone who like, I'm not that I was like the best ever at what I did, but like reached, a pretty significant level. Like it's a point where you're just like, man, I want to learn something new. You do the same, like running is the same step. I mean, there's nuances to it, but you're doing the same thing every single day.
Mm-hmm.
So like learning a new discipline or applying yourself in a different direction, I think is really good for your mental state.
I think my ultimate bucket goal or bucket list item is to through hike the Appalachian Trail one day. And I always say I'm saving that for when I'm older and retired. That way it'll kind of be my motivation to stay in shape and stay healthy for the rest of my life. That's my ultimate bucket list item, is to do that. And that's kind of my motivation for it. So
That's a really cool point, because I was listening to a Huberman Lab podcast a couple months back with Peter Attia, and something that he said that meant a lot to me was that like to decide what you want to do when you're 60 and 70, because when you're at 30, you're training for that. Like whether you know that or like it or not, like what you're able to do at 70 is dictated by what you're doing at 30. And you absolutely have to be periodizing and working towards that 70-year-old goal.
Yeah, I like when he talks about he needs to be able to do a 30-pound goblet squat when he's of grandfather age, because that's basically picking up a toddler. So if you can only do a 35-pound goblet squat right now and you're 45 pounds, you have like no room to lose any strength for the next, let's just say 25 years or whatever it is. So it's a big challenge. So I love putting that in perspective and like realizing that in my 40s, I need to like gain and not lose as much possible strength as possible, because when you hit the top of that, at some point you're going nothing but downhill, and you want that downhill to be as slow as possible. So you're kind of got a similar thing happening there, and it's a great goal to have.
Yeah, I think that I bring up strength training a lot with a lot of people, because like strength is a longevity drug in itself.
Mm-hmm.
Strength is like, when you lose that's one of the greatest determinants for longevity. But I think, unfortunately, because of my feats of strength, when I talk about strength training for people, they think I'm trying to tell them to squat 700 pounds, which is like the last thing that I'm trying to tell anyone to do. Believe me, I wish I hadn't done it some days. But I think that like a very, very simple progression for people is going to be like it work huge dividends. Like if you can work to whatever you deadlift now, if you can work to put another 45-pound plate on that in 5 years, like that's a great goal, and it's super attainable for most people. And just being able to like, have strength in your posterior chain is going to change your life, honestly.
Our college strength and conditioning coach, he would always say, strength is the glass, everything else is the water. And I love that analogy. That kind of just reminded me about what you said just now.
Yeah, I mean, like I do jiu-jitsu now, and it's like this huge controversy, like to be strong in this, because obviously like you can kind of out muscle a lot of stuff, but like it's a great analogy for literally everything else. Because like, you get into, on a literal plane, like you get into a scuffle at a bar, like the stronger person is usually going to win. But also like most things in life, strength helps out a lot with, like like just things going on in life. You gotta pick something up. You gotta pick up your daughter. You gotta pick up whatever. It's a really important tool to have.
Is that Mark Bell that says strength is never a weakness?
Yeah, and weakness is ever a strength. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Mark Bell's, but I think that's a great quote.
It's clever. Yeah, it's a clever quote.
Yeah.
Any plans to compete in BJJ at all?
I was going to on the 29th of this month, but I messed up my shoulder a little bit, and I think it's like my ego. Like I don't know if I want to compete until I know that I'm going to win.
Did you not tap when you should have tapped? Is that how you messed up your shoulder?
This is no one's fault, and I'm really trying not to like blame anyone for it. But I did tap, and the person didn't feel it, and so they cranked it a little bit harder, and my shoulder's just not happy. And I was, and when I went into this, Mike was like, "You got to tap early. You got to make sure you're tapping." And for the
that's
record,
how I messed up my neck. Bad.
I tapped really early. Like I was tapping, and it was like as it was happening, I was like, "This is what Mike warned me about." But I'm not actually. I'm not in a bad spot. I'm not in that in like whatever. But I'm super preventative because like I know if I get to a 3 out of 10, I know it's a really slippery slope to all the way. I saw it happen to Mike, and I'm very preventative about it. So if there's a chance that I'm not 100%, I'm not going to enter myself into a tournament to fight people. Sure. But I'm super interested in it. The sport is growing so fast right now. It's like probably one of the fastest growing sports in America. So with our situation of what we do, to be a part of that is pretty cool. I don't know how, but I'd like to somehow involve it in our content because I think there's a growing population of those people that probably like running really doesn't have a lot of supplements in it.
Yeah,
which is interesting. When you think of supplements, you really only think of like bodybuilding and TikTok bodybuilding. There's really it's true. It's a different sport entirely, like physique building for the internet. But there's not a lot of sports where supplements are like really legitimate, and so I think there's a lot of opportunities for that. I think endurance is ironically terrible with supplements because it's like literally, if you know what marathon itself is, what the word means, where it comes from, like it's like one of the oldest sports. Like how far can you run? Like the fact that there isn't a really good supplement industry there is interesting to me.
Yeah.
So,
Mike, what about you? Plans? You said you're going to get back into the pool.
Yeah. Yeah, the answer is yes. I'm going to do a Masters swim event.
Cool.
Yeah, so I love it too. What happened? I hit my peak of swimming speed in my late 20s actually, and that was when all the good swimmers were like retired for a little bit. And then you get into your 30s. I've done a few races, and like they start coming back. So all the good swimmers, we come back a little bit slower and fatter, but some of them keep it. And some of the open water swims I've done, man, it's hilarious. Like there's this fat old man just flying by, like they float on water so well. It does become a huge technique thing. It's a little different here in Oklahoma for sure, because I moved here from Texas, where there is a bigger swimming community. There's not as much swimming out here, and so a couple of races that are a possibility are going to be a decent drive, and by decent drive, it's like 2 hours, so not a big deal. But yeah, I am not in the water enough to be confident enough, but I can get in any time, just race, it just wouldn't be a time that I'd want. So yeah, there'll be a Masters swim race, something fun to do. And those are kind of I don't know, I get jacked up into it. I get really excited, and it brings it back. So probably done with, I've considered like, would I be able to heal up a little bit better and go back onto the mat and everything? Because I really did enjoy it when I was doing it. But honestly, I think it's a younger man's game, and you get banged up too much. And I know I could swim pretty much forever, and I could do open water races. I have a pace that I can do and never get hurt, so that's kind of how I was. And it's a thinking man's sport. So you get in there, and I come out with good content ideas. You should do an Ironman. You already got the hardest part down. I've actually done the swimming leg of triathlons. I've split a triathlon with, like, we find a cyclist, find a runner and everything. I hate the bike. Really? That's the easiest part. Well, okay. So no, it's for me. I mean, I could ride a bike. So if I'm not being serious, so sprint triathlon is no big deal and everything. Everyone just passes me up. To me, as the swimmer, I did a couple races where I came out of the water in the top 3, and then everyone's just whizzing by you. So it's like the swimming advantage doesn't mean that much. So that was a negative to get good on the bike. It just takes too much time that I don't have. So it's just too much seat time. But I did do, it wasn't a race, but it was the MS 150 event from Houston to Austin in the late 2000s. And I kind of went numb down there for a good month after that. And I used one of those padded seats and everything. And I'm not doing that ever again. So I do not like bike seats. And maybe there's better bike seats. Maybe I don't know. I don't know if Spencer knows much about this, but my dad's a big cyclist, and bike seats have been a big movement. There was a thing about bike seats like leading to like prostate cancer, especially. I've seen studies about that. Scary. I was freaked out. There was probably no hole in the center of it back then, right? Like it was a solid bike seat. Now my understanding is that they have ergonomic. Yeah. Yes, ergonomic. Yeah, I would have. If I had a time machine, I'd probably go back and try to figure that out, because that was not a fun month. Like I saw slow progress, so things were coming back, but like I was freaked out. I probably should have gone to a doctor, but being, in my 20s or whatever, and embarrassed I didn't. But either way, so I don't want to deal with that.
Completely understand that.
But I'll do if anyone out there wants me to swim for them, I'll train for it. Let's do it.
What is the order? It's swim, bike, run.
Swim, bike, run. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that
the most dangerous stuff first, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but I could understand that like the lead you get out of being the best swimmer is probably not all that important if you aren't great at the other two.
Right. If you want to be like elite, you got to be elite at everything probably. But if you want to like do really good, you just need to have adequate swimming and not just don't die out there, and be able to ride your bike strong enough and run enough fast enough after you've like suffered in the water, but don't just die out there,
That's super funny because it's the same thing with powerlifting, squat, bench, deadlift, and
the hardest.
Yeah. So for me, it was like squat,
the dangerous one first. Yeah.
Yeah. Squat was always like at the beginning of my career was like the worst, but it was like deadlift was my best. So like I'd like stay in the pack for like squat, bench, and then like deadlift, I'd like pull out of the pack. And I mean, I wasn't that strong, but at the end of it, it was like great. Okay,
squat
great.
700 pounds says he's not that strong.
At the beginning, my first meet, I squatted 425. And I think I pulled like 585 that time. So it was like I got to pull out of the pack on the end.
Yeah.
My last meet, I squatted 705, which was the second best in the meet, then benched 420, which like hilariously, I was 275 for that meet. 420 was not a good bench for that meet. Like it was the second heaviest, but when you look at like 275ers, they're normally benching like 500 pounds. But
what's the most you ever deadlifted ever? Like not even
700.
The 700.
No, I actually, if you talk about like you ever see like block pulls where you slightly raise it, like I've pulled I think 735, which I bled from the back of my head when I did that. Like,
just from like the exertion,
some sort of pore opened up on my head. I was wearing a tan. Oakley used to make these like standard issue like range caps, which were just like they're really cool. And the back of I had like a coyote tan one that just like lit up with blood, and it was super funny because I went back to my parents' house one time after I moved out, and my dad was wearing this really nice tan Oakley hat, and I was like, "Did you steal that from me after I moved?" And he was like, "No." I was like, "Is there a stain on the back of that?" And he was like, "I don't know where I got this stain from." Like, that's my fucking hat. That's my blood. And he didn't want to wear it anymore, so I got it back. But that all that internal pressure goes somewhere, like because you're crazy. I don't know if you guys are familiar with like the Valsalva maneuver, but like you innately stick the tongue in your back of your mouth and you crush, and you either get hemorrhoids or you bleed from somewhere is what happens. And most powerlifters have done both. So yeah, like there was a video a while ago of Larry Wheels where he was deadlifting and there was just bleeding from his chest.
Right? Yeah, I saw that.
And people were like, "That's so unhealthy," and I was like, It's a momentary increase in blood pressure. It's not that bad, but like it looks really, really bad.
Looks terrifying.
Yeah. I remember like reaching the back of my head and I was like, "Oh, that's not good." So that's why I don't powerlift anymore. My blood pressure is now back to normal.
Now you just try to choke people out and have them not choke you out. So
it is. I thought that it was going to be a safer sport for me because it's called the gentle art.
But it's not.
It's not. It's definitely not. But it is the craziest.
We all pick our poisons, right? Like running 100 miles probably isn't healthy. Riding your bike to the point of stuff going numb down there isn't healthy. So pick your poison, right? We got to live.
Well, apparently, I think it is an important thing for men to find something to compete in, and that's definitely something that I've lacked in my life. So I appreciate you asking that, because I get so wired up when I'm out there. But it's just the whole. You sign up, you just got to do it, right? Cody, our videographer, is going to be a show. Yeah. It's an important thing for guys. We don't have that.
Sure it is.
Yeah. I do think that, and I'm new to this, so like I've of course sound like I'm on like a soapbox with this, but I really do believe that like a martial art or like a combat sport is important for men to at some point do. I was never afraid of confrontation, but the concept of someone being in my personal space was a good thing for me to learn about and how to control that. And I also just think that like understanding what your body can do and that kind of system is really important for men. I walked into that gym thinking like I rarely have positive experiences with other men in gyms just because of like my size, and I have a bit of a resting dick face, and most people don't want to be friendly with me, but I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, and like we're all gonna be friends afterwards. But like, you all kind of roll with each other, you choke each other out a couple times, and like all of a sudden everyone's your best friend. It's a cool experience with that. But in general, just like competing in a whole, I definitely believe is good for men.
I actually dabbled in jujitsu for about 6 months. I was addicted to it for 6 months when I was in the military. I was stationed in Hawaii for a period of time, and I actually took classes under Jay Penn. BJ Penn's older brother was my coach, was my instructor.
Very cool.
I got to learn from him, which was amazing. But what you just said is 100% true. You guys beat the crap out of each other for an hour straight, hour and a half straight during class, and then you're all best friends after. For me, it was a little bit unique though, being a white guy in Hawaii, rolling with native Hawaiians. Haole is the native Hawaiian term for like a white boy, like derogatory term for white boy. So I was that Haole in the first 3 months I was there, and I could tell I wasn't exactly welcome, but I kept getting my ass kicked, and I kept coming back for more every day, and eventually I was one of the guys, and they accepted me, and it was cool. It was such a rewarding sport to be a part of. That was kind of right before the pandemic happened, and obviously jiu-jitsu was like the first thing that got shut down because of everybody panicking about stuff. But yeah, I was like straight addicted to it for 6 months straight. I literally went 5 to 6 days a week for 6 months straight. I would show up the formation, the more of the black eye, like every day. And people were like, what the heck are you doing in your free time? And I'd explain to them, like, I'm addicted to Brazilian jiu-jitsu right now.
Yeah. I mean, I understand that addiction. And I understand the coming back every day. Like there were a couple weeks where I was not, I was the nail, not the hammer.
Yeah.
And just showing up again, like with going home, icing, and maybe like licking your wounds a little bit, but getting back there the next day. Like did they haze you? Was it like a
It wasn't so much of like a hazing, like nothing like high school hazing type, but it was like, I can tell like when we're like flow rolling, these guys aren't flow rolling with me. And when I'm tapping, they're holding on to stuff for a second or two longer just to, prove a point, like, hey, new guy, or hey, how old, like, I'd been involved with sports my whole life. Like it wasn't anything out of the ordinary to me. Like when you first get on varsity in high school for football, you get the crap kicked out of you and people messing with you. Is no different. So
yeah, but
then
I love
once you prove your worth. Yeah, once you prove your worth, they welcome you, and you're a brother to them now. So
that's the good stuff. Like to me, like there's a really great. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Jim Wendler. He's a really great strength and conditioning coach. He wrote Wendler 5-1, and he tells this story. The podcast that inspired me to be a podcaster actually is where he told this, but he tells a story where when he was like in middle school, his dad was, I think, like a janitor at the high school. For whatever reason, he was able to get him into the weight room he wanted to weightlift. So he brought him in, let him weightlift. And he was lifting on his own. Nobody would help him or anything. And he lifted for like a whole year. Strength and conditioning coach comes over to him, was like, he saw his deadlift. He was like, you should do RDLs. They'd be good for you. And like walks away. And that's all he tells him. And like 6 months later, like he's strong or whatever. And he asked the guy, he's like, why did you wait so long to tell me like to do this variation? He's like, you had to earn it. Like you can't just come in and just like be one of us. Like I had to see you stick around. And that's something like I feel really hardcore in gyms is like, I don't like telling the new guy anything because like they might not stick around. And that was something that I really enjoyed about jiu-jitsu, was like becoming a part of that community. Like all of a sudden, like at first, like you're still like the white belt trial guy, I'm still a white belt guy. I just have one stripe now, and being able to like hang around a little bit longer with the people it's quite awesome.
Yeah, that's it. You definitely have to earn it. That's cool.
Can't hear you, Mike. You're muted. So yeah, I think he might have ran out of power or something.
Oh.
Yeah, he must have ran out of power. That's funny. His lights went off. Well, I think that I am gonna have to. Do I have to clear? Nod your head if I have to close this one out, Mike. Yep. All right. Cool. Well, it's been a cool hour and 45. So, Spencer, could you give us maybe your Instagram and how we can contact you if anyone wants to reach out?
Yeah, on Instagram, I'm at slynn46, or then just look me up on LinkedIn too, Spencer Lynn. Happy to connect with anybody in the supplement, sports nutrition world, CPG world. Happy to talk retail, CPG, supplements, sports nutrition anytime too.
Awesome. Do you have any upcoming events or anything like you did with Summit that people should be looking out for?
Well, I'll be at Supply Side East next week in New Jersey. I'm not speaking or anything. I'll just be attending the event, and then also be rolling into ShopRite out in New Jersey in April of this month too. We're rolling out into ShopRite locations across the country, well, across the Northeast. So I'll be at ShopRite doing some activations next week as well.
That's awesome. I think I'll be at Supply City, so I'll have to see if I can come grab you. But also, let me know what ShopRites you're going to. Super curious.
Okay, cool.
I worked at ShopRite when I was 17. So.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, that's super cool. Awesome. Well, Spencer, thanks so much for your time. We'll be talking soon.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me, and thanks, Mike.